Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Photo of the Week on the Daily Critique. This week's Photo of the Week was created by Peter, who's an intermediate photographer from Montana. The backstory information: Peter says he took this image at a freestyle kayaking qualifier at Brennan's Wave in Missoula, Montana. Shot this with a Canon 7D 70-200 zoom at 140 millimeters. So after the crop factor, we can see the effective focal length here is pretty long telephoto, over 200 millimeters. The exposure trio is ISO 200, f4, and 1/3200 of a second. Peter has some more backstory information that I want to talk about in a minute. This image is going to give us a chance to talk about quite a few things today. Just want to start off talking about what I like about the image. Obviously, it's an incredible moment, and that's, to me, the main subject of the image. It's not just the kayaker, it's the kayaker at this particular moment. One of the things that Peter said is that he was waiting as the kayakers came through, and as they went to do their stunts, he was trying to shoot a burst of many frames very quickly. And so I just wanted to mention something technical here. This is a classic example of when your equipment really does matter, and having a camera that has the ability to shoot a lot of frames in a second. It's going to make a big difference in whether you're going to get more or less shots that are exciting in terms of stopping this kind of action. The Canon 7D is a camera that is able to shoot at 8 frames a second. So really good choice for this kind of work, and I just wanted to mention that. You may be out there thinking about getting a camera, and features of a camera a lot of times can be very important if you are specialized. Let's say that you really like to shoot something like action or sports. In addition to this incredible moment, there are a lot of other things that I like about the image. One of the things that I like about it is, even though there's a lot of local and overall contrast in this image, it's being made simple by a couple of ideas. Peter shot this at f4, and focus falls off in the background of this shot. And even though it's not a dramatic fall off of focus, it's enough to help to simplify. This is the main subject, and this is a lot sharper in here. But really, to my eye, the thing that's helping to simplify this big time is the idea of color theory. The water in the background is pretty color neutral. Even though there's a lot of contrast, there's not much vibrant color at all. A lot of earth tones, pretty muted. If we look at the whole shape of the kayak and then the kayaker, all the color is right there. Not only that, there's also something else that's happening that's very graphic. It's helping to simplify this from a color standpoint. The real vibrant color is on the outside. You've got red and yellow on sort of the outside of this overall idea, and then cool in the middle. The other thing that's helping to really sort of anchor this and make it very graphic is the black that's in here. And something else that's working well from a color standpoint is that real bright reds, real bright yellows, they play really well off of rich blacks and specular highlights of white. They're also balanced well by those color ideas. From a color standpoint, this image is working to me in a real powerful way. Color is helping to keep things simple. Something else that's really fascinating to me about this image, it gives us a chance to talk about it, just the idea of the way we naturally move in a blank frame, and then contouring line and implied energy. In the West, we like to start at the top left and move to the bottom right. This is a very powerful diagonal. It's a natural flow of movement. And in this image, you have the kayak moving on that diagonal and some other lines here. Because the kayak is moving on this diagonal, and there's sort of an implication of diagonal movement into the main subject with the arms, some of the other diagonal lines at the top of the boat, it's very, very easy to get to the main subject, and it's also very easy to flow, to my mind's eye, through the main part of the image. What's interesting is that after you look at these contouring lines that are moving in a way and set up in a way where it goes with the way I naturally want to move with the image, then you have an implied energy due to gravity on the other diagonal. So the implication is that not only is this a very dynamic moment, but what's coming up is that the boat is potentially flipping in this direction. So there's an implication of movement cross-hatching these literal contouring lines on the other diagonal. And it's just really fascinating how the orientation of these lines have an effect on how we feel about what is happening. one of the things that I'll say from a design standpoint, I've talked about this a lot, is that either implying or working with on contouring lines, the main diagonals, can help to unify and tie images together. Peter has that here. Contouring lines here, implied lines here. He's cropped this more square too, which really accentuates that and helps to tie everything together. What's sort of fascinating to me is that we want to sort of move in this direction. And so in this orientation, even though there's an implication that the kayak could fall in this way, there's almost this feeling of this energy being suspended because we want to move in this direction, and that natural movement helps to hold this up. What's fascinating is if you flip this image, that you get a much stronger sense of the boat rolling over, because we naturally want to move in this direction. There's more implied energy pushing this way to come down and hit this line, sort of tipping. You get a much stronger sense that this kayaker is going to roll in this orientation, to my mind's eye, than you do here. Would love to hear your feedback about that, but I just really wanted to take the time today to show how different an image can feel if we flip it based on the implication of the way that we move through the frame. There are going to be some photographers in some situations where you would never flip. It's more documentary and you wouldn't do that, but you may be shooting something that's more abstract. You may be shooting something where you're okay with the idea of changing the editorial content at a basic level of flipping the image. It's just something I want to remind all of us today we can be constantly aware of, because just the simple act flipping an image can have a huge effect on the way the average viewer is going to move through. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is relative to a little bit more backstory information here. You can sort of ascertain this by just looking at the picture, but Peter said that he had to shoot midday. This is when the event happened in very, very harsh light. He said he was worried about blowing out water highlights, so he exposed intentionally to protect those highlights. And he said sometimes that was at the expense of darker facial features or certain boats, so on and so forth. And he said that he also used the HDR function in CS5 to essentially extend dynamic range a little bit, and does it look realistic? And so I wanted to talk about those two things. Let me just talk about the HDR. I think if Peter used HDR here, I don't get a sense of it. You know, when retouching becomes a subject of the picture, then it takes away from whatever the idea was, and I don't get a sense of that here at all. So if he's been able to extend dynamic range using that feature of CS5, to my eye, he's done a great job of not bringing that to my attention as the viewer. But the other thing that I wanted to mention that is maybe potentially a powerful takeaway from this video is that we can get so caught up in just shooting in certain qualities of light. I mean, you know, we can say that we're only going to shoot early and late and sweet light. We can say that we're only going to shoot sunrise, sunset, or just before that, just after it, so on and so forth. We can say we're only going to shoot on water and quiet light. Quality of light is relative to your subject and what you're trying to say about your subject. And one of the things that's making this so dynamic is the hard light combined with the fast shutter speed. And softer light, you wouldn't have as much contrast, and this wouldn't have nearly as much energy in the image. And so I just really wanted to mention that today. I really want you to work with the inspiration of Peter's image to challenge yourself to go out and shoot in qualities of light that you've been avoiding for a long time. You're going to find that there are some great situations beyond a sporting event like this that could be beautiful and very hard qualities of light, and that's going to give you more choices as a photographer. Is going to make you a more creative person. Really absolutely fantastic moment from Peter here, just in terms of what's happening with the action, the implication of what's going to happen next. I love the square crop. I love the implication of the diagonals. So just love the way color played out in this particular image. I want to say a big thank you to Peter for sharing this image with us, and I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. I hope you have a great weekend, everybody.